No, I'm not a politician. Well, number one, thank you all for coming in. This is really, really important conversations for the future of Nebraska. I want to really thank everybody that's here. And maybe two things. One, I just want to really give a big shout out to the Love family and industry, that the investment that's being made in Nebraska. It's really, really a big deal for Hannon, and we're grateful for that. And then also, there was a press release yesterday about the project with DG Fuels that is going to be a $5 billion investment. I think one of the things that's really important for all of us in Nebraska, we know we can compete. We know we can compete with anybody in the world. We have to start thinking, get comfortable, being uncomfortable, thinking big, because we have an extraordinary opportunity to make an incredible difference for the planet, but obviously the state of Nebraska is going to win big time, and our country is going to win big time, being the leaders, being the epicenter of the bioeconomy. And it's going to be really, really important as we grow this economy that we bring people to Nebraska that love this place as much as we do. We call it givers. My father told me there's two kinds of people. There's givers and takers. Be a giver. It's way more rich than that way to live. And we have to make sure that people that want to do business in Nebraska, that they're givers. And couldn't be more proud of Michael just walking in, Michael Darcy at DG Fuels. He's made a $50 million commitment for community enhancement for Phelps County and the state of Nebraska. We also talked about how incredibly important it is that when we start viewing the world from 7 generations perspective, how incredibly important every drop of water, that we all need to brag about, that we have the largest, most sustainable underground water aquifer in the Western Hemisphere. And our intention is to keep it that way, not to have it drained. And Michael Darcy said, hey, I can make a difference. DG Fuels can backhaul water to Nebraska. Has anybody ever heard of that? So we have extraordinary opportunities to compete and make an incredible difference, making so many things from carbon above the ground instead of from carbon below the ground. We're the epicenter, nobody can compete with us. And so we're grateful for everybody here. Valerie, thank you for your team all being out here, and we'll have a great day again tomorrow. So I just wanted to say thanks, and Paul, thanks for moderating.
Thank you, Governor Cullen. So welcome. I'm Paul Zorner. I won't spend too much time on myself. I will tell you that I am the chair of the governing board of the Alternative Fuels and Chemicals Coalition. And the reason I mention that is, number one, Rena Singh, our executive director, would kill me if I not mentioned the AFCC. But secondly, we represent 600,000, well, about 160 members, 600,000 jobs, and $350 billion of combined revenue. All of those people are working on advanced bioeconomy. And my dream, we're going to talk about dreams and what we're hoping for the state of Nebraska. My dream is to come back here in 3, 4, 5 years and have 600,000 jobs in the state of Nebraska, $350 billion in terms of the growing bioeconomy. Because I think what's being done here, led by Governor Cullen and his team, has tremendous opportunity to achieve that. It's exciting. I'm pumped up from this morning. And we have kind of a draconian schedule that my good friend Julie Michelle, who's standing back there, organized today. And I'm going to try to follow it, but the one thing I really want to happen today, this is a world-class group of organizations and individuals that have been recruited to this panel by Julie. So Julie, thank you very much. It's a real honor and opportunity to participate in this. But I want everybody to brag about what they do and who they are and who their organizations are, as well as their dreams for Nebraska and what they want to accomplish here. I think the governor had a good point today. Let's brag. Let's be proud of who we are and what we're doing. It's really meaningful for future generations. And we talked about the definition of success. And there was a session this morning in the water, and I don't know who the gentleman was. His name was Joe. He was a producer. He said, well, my definition of success is that I am now leaving the management of my farm to my sons-in-law, and I'm going to work with them. That's my success. Multi-generational farming communities. It just was an absolutely remarkable thing. So what I'd like to do is to give each of you the opportunity, we'll start with Valerie and work our way north here. I don't know, is that north? But anyways, yeah, it is now, yeah. To speak a little bit about your organization, you know, your view of the building of Nebraska bioeconomy and your definition of success. So please take your time. I know I allotted you each about 2 to 3 minutes, but if it takes longer than that, we're going to go with that. Right.
Okay, so hopefully I can do this the way you are expecting. So first I want to introduce myself. I am the director for the Bioenergy Technologies Office in the Department of Energy, so we work at the federal level. We are funded through our congressional appropriations to do research and development, both in feedstocks as well as in the conversion technologies that will enable, in the long run, the bioeconomy. One of the other major roles we have is integrating all of that technology into pathways that can be standardized, regulated, and then utilized by industry. And we also help to reduce the risk of ensuring that these technologies are commercialized. So very quickly, I want to ask you, what does Novonexus, Cargill, ADM, and even to some degree DG have in common?
Or to spill.
Besides that, they have all at some point in time been in DOE working either with us directly or trying to help establish their industries at the state and local level with the help of federal activity. So we are really there to help companies find their way through a maze of crazy rules and regulations. How can they get the help that they need in order to establish their business lines, their product lines? Two other things I want to point out that DOE has major roles in: sustainable aviation fuel. We are one of the lead organizations, along with our partners at FAA and USDA, in the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Grand Challenge. The Grand Challenge was established as a government-wide effort through the White House to enable the production of sustainable aviation fuel, which has been shown to be the only real logical solution for aviation to decarbonize. And that's really important because ethanol to jet, or alcohol to jet, is a real technology that has the potential to grow the market for ethanol and enable us to have 80 to 90% carbon reduction in our aviation, in flying, whether we're going, just around the corner or all the way across the world. Our goal for this, our near-term goal, is 3 billion gallons, and in the lifetime of the Grand Challenge, we have already quadrupled the amount of volume that's being produced in the United States. So motivating everyone to work together is really having a measurable impact. And then the other major activity that both USDA, DOE, and many others in the federal government are working towards is the National Bioeconomy Initiative. And this is, again, you've heard the executive order over and over again. We have created a National Bioeconomy Board, and it's made up of high-level decision makers from every agency that's involved, and its secretariat. And I'm currently on the secretariat. We're helping to develop that roadmap, develop that real bioeconomy for the US. And I'll talk way more about that tomorrow. So what do I see that's really critical for Nebraska? Well, I see working with the states and the communities. States and communities are where the rubber meets the road, where the hard work happens, where the feedstock is, and therefore the states and communities should benefit from this. They should see the jobs, they should see the economic environment, and they should be able to see their children stay in those communities because of that. And so for me, that's one of the most exciting things I see about what Nebraska's trying to do here. And you're true leaders in that space, so I congratulate you on that.
Valerie, thank you very much, and I can tell people that your team are remarkably easy to work with and productive. It's a real pleasure to have you in the position you are to help influence this.
Tough to follow, Valerie, but my name is Reid, Wagner, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nebraska Ethanol Board. So we're gonna brag, right? Just like Paul asked us to. Nebraska truly has been a visionary in the ethanol space, starting back in the 82nd legislature with our state senator, Lauren Schmidt, considered the godfather of ethanol, really opening the door by creating what is known as today the Ethanol Board, but originally was the Agricultural Products Industrial Utilization Committee. Yes, it was a mouthful. We got told it was a mouthful, and eventually, as we kind of brought and ingratiated ethanol into our fuel supply, we really transformed ourselves into a true economic development and market development agency trying to build out that ethanol infrastructure in the country. It took us about 10 to 12 years to get the first plant in Hastings, a nice 10 million gallon facility, and now we're up to 24, making about 2.2 billion gallons today, so we're doing pretty well. The overall positive economic impact from that is about $5 billion, and I kind of said this in a panel earlier today. After we kind of found our way into the gas tank, the true name of the game has been diversification. Going forward and trying to find new uses for the other pieces of the corn kernel. Of course, we're using starch for ethanol, but there's all of the other important ingredients left. And so we started to look into dry distillers grains, corn oil, and even further from that, we're finding great, fantastic new uses for those particular co-products, and continuing to diversify and open new markets for our agricultural producers, all with the name of the game being bring value back to Nebraska. And one thing that really excites our particular board about the Nebraska Bioeconomy initiative is that it's a holistic, all-of-state approach. It's got the full value chain involved, and being involved in a lot of the planning process for different kinds of grant applications or things that are coming through this particular initiative. It's been clear that agriculture continues to be the central focal point out of which Nebraska plans to build this bioeconomy, and it couldn't be coming from a better place, because that's where our strength and our expertise lies. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you. That's you. Yes, all right.
Hello, everyone. Nice little Jewish boy from Beverly Hills. How did I end up in Nebraska? I am here to clearly take advantage and basically I'll use the word exploit your success. The more ethanol you make, the more feedstock I have. Because my process in making sustainable aviation fuel uses the corn cob, not the corn. Okay? So I'm basically turning a waste product, generally, from your point of view, into a high value-added feedstock for the production of sustainable aviation fuel. And it can be done in large scale. There's not a pound of corn stover that is in Nebraska that I don't have a customer for. It's really that simple. The demand for sustainable aviation fuel is truly gigantic, and with the help of Governor Hannon and Julie and a number of other folks in this room right now, we're looking to do a $5 billion project with a different portion of the Department of Energy, but standing on some of the work that Valerie and her team have done that allows us to turn that corn stover into high-value sustainable aviation fuel. Okay? Now, right now, that basically means you're talking about generating over $100 million a year of additional revenue for agriculture in the state. It means you're talking about 650 jobs, permanent, high-value jobs that politicians love. These are blue-collar jobs you put your kids through college on. Okay? This is an important factor for being able to stop a brain drain. I can't get my kid to mow the lawn, but he loves running the robot that mows the lawn. Okay? Oh, he's on that. Okay? So, bottom line here is, these are good jobs, and it does turn this, what is a relatively low value byproduct of your success in the ethanol business, and turns it into additional high value. Okay? That's, maybe I should stop there and then time for
Thank you. You got it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gavin Gretter. I work for Love's Travel Stops based out of Oklahoma City. Very happy to be here. Love's is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year. We have 648 travel stops nationwide. We're the second largest dispenser of retail diesel fuel in the United States. We're really proud to have 8 travel centers here in Nebraska. And we're especially proud to be working with our partners, Cargill, on the Hartwell Renewables project, a renewable diesel facility that we are constructing in Hastings, Nebraska. Renewable diesel is a lot of similar things to what folks are talking about here around both ethanol and sustainable aviation fuel. Renewable diesel has been a significant area of growth for our company and for the heavy-duty industry. It is the most economically viable way to lower emissions in the heavy-duty sector available right now. And so we're very excited to be partnering with Cargill, with the governor, with the state, to bring this facility online, I hope in the next 12 to 18 months. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you very much. John?
Hello everyone, John Hannon, Chief Operating Officer of Vertimass. So you guys probably haven't heard of Vertimass before, but tell you a little bit about the technology. It was actually originated at the Oak Ridge National Laboratories back in 2013, and the technology did things that we've never seen before. So it's able to take ethanol directly to sustainable aviation fuel or gasoline or even renewable propane and butane in one step. So no one's ever done that before. Conventional way to do it is 4 to 5 steps. And so that really offers the lowest cost route from ethanol to these products. The other cool thing that we're working on is using another cool product from the corn ethanol industry, which is carbon dioxide. So we can take carbon dioxide combined with hydrogen to make methanol, and then we take that methanol to sustainable aviation fuels. We recently got approved for a gasoline blend so renewable gasoline blend with petroleum-derived gasoline up to 20%, and so that opens up tremendous markets for the ethanol industry. So when you think about the ethanol blend wall, if it's at 10-15%, now you can take that ethanol, convert it into gasoline, and then you have another 20%, so it can really open up the markets for ethanol. We thank you for inviting us to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, John. Sir?
I want to start with, Nebraska's special. Take a look at this room. Look at the caliber of superstar panelists that are here to discuss this topic. There's standing room only here. This is the first panel discussion that I've been a part of my entire life where we have a governor who's in the room. We have a governor who has championed the issue of sustainable aviation fuel, a legislature that has come to the table and said, let's move forward with a SAF credit. This is a very exciting time, not only for talking about SAF, but just, the people who are here and wanting to engage in this and help open the dialogue is really, really exciting. But I should mention, my name is Sarah Gonzales. I am the Director of State and Local Government Affairs for Delta Airlines. I come to this work having a background working in state and local government, most recently for the Governor of Michigan. And 3 years ago, I started in the aviation industry space and fell absolutely in love with it. It's challenging, there's innovation. We continue to look at how improvements can be made for the betterment of our people and our greatest asset, which really is our team members. We have about just over 100,000 people who lead the way in delivering a world-class service for Delta on over 4,000 flights daily to more than 280 destinations to over 6 continents across the globe. In 2023, we served 190 million customers safely, reliably, and with industry-leading customer service through innovation. For Delta, our goal is to become carbon neutral by 2050, and with 90% of our carbon emissions coming from fuel, SAF is the most important lever that we have to decarbonize. And at Delta, we're working on decreasing the industry's reliance on conventional jet fuel by growing demand of the SAF market, much like the people who are on this panel are doing today. But we know that no single company can do it alone, and we must, within our roles in our own companies and discussion with others and partners, deliver a better future for those that we care about. So for us to meet our 2050 net zero goals, we're prioritizing on acting on what we can do now while innovating to the future, and that really aligns, it seems like, with what Nebraska is doing in the work right now. We cannot talk about growing a SAF economy in the United States without focusing on the Midwest, which is benefiting from those forward-thinking policies like the state SAF credit that was passed here in the state and other Midwest states like Minnesota and Illinois and others that are in discussion in Michigan and other states. And we're really excited for the innovation of companies that are driving investment in the Midwest like DG Fuels, who is a Delta offtake partner, who are transporting biofuels while producing quality jobs and clean energy, and the enthusiasm in industries in key are key in developing really the framework for a robust biofuels industry. And it's really encouraging, like I mentioned, to see Nebraska leaders from different sectors join together to discuss what's next for the biofuels industry. And I will say in particular, I know that, being here with the Department of Energy, given, their strong leadership as a key part of the administration's SAF grand challenge, it's really set an industry standard, and it's really putting us on a path as a country with that goal of making 3 billion gallons of SAF available to the airline industry by 2030, and an estimated 35 billion gallons by 2050 to fully replace this jet fuel. And we hope that this is just the beginning of these conversations, and hopefully with more people who are present here today.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So now we're gonna start with some questions. Last night I drove here about sunset from Lincoln, and as I was driving, I just saw these massive, as far as you can see, cornfields. And I always think when I see that, there's an above ground oil field. To go on your comments, Governor Pella, in terms of above ground carbon farming. But really, it is an above ground oil field. It replenishes itself every single year. It's sustainable. It's abundant. It's regenerative. But it's really important. But then at lunch today, I sat next to with a young lady, and she said, "Well, what is bioeconomy? It seems like we stick bio in front of everything. So what's a bioeconomy? What's a bio this? What's a bio that?" So the next question, we'll start with you, Sarah, is what does the bioeconomy mean to you, and how will it shape your company? I know you've all addressed that to a certain extent here. But if you were trying to explain this to somebody sitting on the bus or at lunch or at a PTA meeting, what would you tell them?
I'd say for Delta, the bioeconomy, it really represents the fuel of air travel, with sustainable aviation fuel, with SAF. It's really, as I mentioned, the most important lever to decarbonize right now. With that said, the potential, impact of, talking about a thoughtful bioeconomy really soars far beyond Delta specifically. And it's transitioning those biofuels, specifically in aviation, can yield to economic opportunities for American farmers, for rural communities, to harness American innovation, to reduce emissions and reduce Americans' reliance on foreign energy. Specifically, I'm going to give you, 3 things here. One is just creating jobs, right? This is a brand new industry, and it's not going to exist just for the short term. We're talking about, sometimes it seems like when we talk about the transition of, to clean fuels, we think of it, something that's in the short term, something as a bridge to electrification. And electrification probably won't power an airplane for another 100 years. And the SAF really is the solution, and will be the solution sometime, not only for our generation, but for my kids' generation, your kids' generation, grandkids. And there are many jobs to be developed in this new industry, as we talked about, the programming, the lawn mower. My son also would love to be able to do that. Supporting farmers at the basis of who we are, right? American farmers can capitalize on the production of SAF market by farming existing crops and turning them into SAF. It's a growing market, and the numbers really speak for themselves. Delta will go from purchasing 300 million gallons of sustainable aviation fuel, and that's only because that's as much as we could get this past year, to 4 billion gallons of SAF in the next 20 years. And we know that through the Air Transportation Action Group, it's estimated that 14 million jobs globally could be created by the shift from SAF alone. So last year, I will mention in our work together that Delta announced a revolutionary coalition really to expand on this work to scale sustainable aviation fuel, and it's really spurred by that tax credit in Minnesota. So we have a partnership right now, and it's something that may be of a discussion with Julie or others in the future here, but this innovative group, it's a revolutionary coalition to scale sustainable aviation fuel, and it's spurred by the tax credit that was passed last summer in Minnesota. It's through our partnership with Bank of America, Ecolab, Next Energy. We've established the Minnesota SAF Hub. It's the first large-scale SAF hub in the United States. It has collaboration across partners in the value chain who are committed really to scaling that sustainable aviation fuel. And also, one of the items too that I think that we'll discuss a little bit more in an opportunity for collaboration to continue to talk about biofuels is that we are a founding member of Americans for Clean Aviation Fuels, ACAF. It's a diverse coalition of the largest sectors in America, from farmers, fuel producers, aviation, agribusiness, and that group is focusing on growing the economic benefits of building a robust market in the clean aviation fuels in the state. But bottom line is, no one has cornered the market on SAF, and really believe that the United States is really poised, right, and has all the tools necessary to be a leader in the market.
Great, thank you, Sarah. John?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for a little bit of background, so my background's actually in the oil and gas industry, and I moved to renewables just about 20 years ago. And so to me, when I go to fill my tank up, it's 90%, derived from petroleum in the ground. When you go to fill your propane tank up, it's from the ground. And same thing when it goes for aviation fuel, 99% of it is from petroleum from the ground. So to me, that's the existing economy, and to transition to the bioeconomy is really to take all those products, even plastics that you see around here is derived from petroleum. So taking all those products and that whole system and moving it into a renewable way to do things, to me, is moving to a more bioeconomy. Things I'm really excited about Nebraska is you have, the second largest ethanol producing state. And so from Vertimass' standpoint, being able to take that ethanol and to turn it into renewable propane, renewable gasoline, sustainable aviation fuels is really transitioning toward the bioeconomy. Another product we make is plastics, and so that's another transition. So to me, bioeconomy is kind of transitioning into renewable forms of petroleum products.
Great, thank you, John. Gavin?
So, there we go. Love's got heavily into renewable fuels, really when the renewable fuel standard was passed and implemented because of the requirement to blend biodiesel into diesel. As an unbranded fuel retailer, we are liable for the fuel that we sell. We can't go back to anybody if something in your gas tank or in a heavy duty truck's diesel tank goes south. So we have had to source test and self-blend biodiesel since the very beginning of the RFS. And we've really come to figure out a couple of things that these are really good products. Biodiesel and renewable diesel are really solid products. They are solid fuels that meet our customers' needs, their emissions reduction needs. But it also does it in a way that saves them money. Biodiesel and renewable diesel, not only through the incentives and the relative costs of production, but also through what they do to the diesel pool, lowers the overall price of diesel for the global economy, and most importantly, at least for me, the US economy. And with 75% of US GDP moving via truck at some point, that has a pretty massive effect on the entire national economy. So we have been early and heavy adopters of biodiesel. Renewable diesel is a natural progression of that, and renewable diesel production is the next logical step in that. So several years ago, we got started on what is now the Hartwell project, trying to figure out the best place to locate a renewable diesel production facility, and as close as possible to the feedstock. Makes a great deal of sense, and that was really why Nebraska was chosen. It has been wonderful to see, though, the way that the state government has been such a wonderful ally for us as well. It was something we were optimistic about, but Governor, your administration, the entire state has really exceeded our expectations. We're excited to bring those 80 million plus gallons online here, again in the next 12 to 18 months, and the 500 construction jobs, I think, give or take, between now and when the plant's online, and the more than 80 permanent positions that the facility will have once everything starts up. Love's is a all of the above retailer. We want to provide the fuels that our customers want to buy at the minimum price possible, and biodiesel and renewable diesel fit that just to a T, especially here.
Awesome, thank you, Gavin. John?
As I've been sitting here listening to what everybody has to say, and I'm trying to come up with a way that it's not basically repeating the very intelligent and correct things that have been said, I'm going to start with a simple question. What do you think the lowest life cycle cost of electric production is in America today? How many here think it's coal? How many people here think it's natural gas? Okay, it's solar. Okay, why is it low? Because yeah, you have higher upfront costs, but the sun doesn't cost anything. Okay, one of the reasons why companies like Delta like our kind of sustainable aviation fuel is because it's a stable pricing model. Okay? I'm here to build upon your success, and I need your help doing it. The fact of the matter is, the state of Nebraska has the opportunity to triple the value of its commodity export by upgrading it to product, not commodity. This is exactly what your governor is saying. It's part of the reason I'm here. Because it's hard to find somebody who looks past all of the stuff. Lots of people think that, oh, I must be a California liberal. I grew up with Ronald Reagan, Claire Booth Lewis, and William F. Buckley at my dinner table. Okay? This is about efficiency and effectively taking a feedstock that is highly undervalued and turning it into something that meets the growth demand. Climate change is real, but it's not really about what we're doing today. It's about what's going to happen over the next 20 to 30 years as more and more people want what we take for granted. Air conditioning, TV sets. I come from a very veteran family. I have family members who fought in 5 different wars. And the one thing they will say is they don't want Nebraskans having to pick up a rifle and stand a post because some guy in Malaysia wants to pour a cold glass of milk for his kid. Renewable fuels and the success that Nebraska has had in the ethanol industry and its agriculture gives me the feedstock I need to feed that growth and energy demand. I have people come to me and say, we've got to stop all fossil fuel development, we've got to stop it all. BS, we all want to fill up our tank in 3 minutes, we want to hit that switch, turn the electricity on, and my son isn't going to run that lawnmower without something to charge it in. These things don't happen overnight. But on the other hand, we all have to remember that at the end of the during the First World War and during the Second World War, the pipeline right-of-ways that are the basis of the fossil fuel industry were built and provided to the oil and gas industry for free by the US government. They were built to fight the wars. At the end of the First World War, nobody would buy them. At the end of the Second World War, they said, we'll give them away to make sure they're used. And that and the kind of efforts you saw, Tennessee Valley Association, federal government does good things, but in the end, it comes down to what do states lead and do. The future of the bioeconomy is to do more of what you do best and to show leadership in doing it. We cannot step back and take a hands-off approach, but at the same time, we need to understand that this has to be beneficial at the local level. And what Nebraska does best is what it's going to do in the future. Okay? All right. I'm off my soapbox.
Thank you.
Give it to me.
I'll jump on mine. First of all, John, I think you can do better. You said there's 90% of petroleum in your fuel. I challenge you to go for 85%. Choose E15 or unleaded 88 at the pump when you leave the city today. Or if you're ambitious, maybe 70% with E30, we like that as well.
I'd like it to be 100%, you know?
Okay, look,
Yeah.
we can work on that. We can work on that. Well, I think what the bioeconomy means for the Nebraska ethanol industry, I mean, I mentioned it in my opening comments, which is continue to diversify and innovate. That's just the way that we've continually provided more and more value back to our agricultural producers across the state. And the bioeconomic outlook and the picture and everybody on this stage fits perfectly into that narrative, so we will continue to go ahead and look for things like that. I mean, this innovation, this diversification has brought really interesting projects. I already called out AFAN once, but their director, Steve Martin, I don't know if he's in here today, but we had a really nice conversation about a salmon farm in Nebraska. And that was really only possible because we have an ethanol producer who's making high protein feeds out of their grains, that they're processing at their ethanol plant, to be able to drive more value, you know, to those local communities, to be able to open up new locations, even on the food, in the food side, which is really cool to see that interaction. But now we've got, of course, these fantastic projects that are up here on the table today, as well as, of course, some of the innovation coming through. You know, things like turning ethanol into plastics. You look at places like the Cargill campus in Blair, or the ADM facility in Columbus, doing different biochemicals. As we look toward new biofuels, I think we've got a pretty good ear and eye for that. But all in the name of bringing value back to our stakeholders and trying to make sure that we turn that ceiling, I guess what you might think of it, of $5 to $7 billion of economic impact today into a floor, and really elevating ourselves beyond where we've been in terms of value for Nebraska.
So Valerie, before you start, you're the last person on this. So I'm gonna expand on what we're asking you. And I think, you know, to me, a bioeconomy is a local economy. That's very important. I think we're getting ready to see one of the most massive transfers of wealth we'll ever see into rural communities. And I think that's very important. You know, I'm from San Diego, don't prove it, but it's a beautiful place. I have 4 children. Not a single one of those 4 children could afford to live in San Diego. They all are highly educated people, and they're not necessarily interested in a job. They're interested in a career. And so I'm just curious, can you structure your comments, especially your national leadership in this, how a bioeconomy translates to local economies, and how it translates to careers and economic stability for rural communities?
Okay, I think I can do this.
I think you can.
So the one thing that I didn't hear as I listened to all these great comments about what the bioeconomy means was really what is at the heart and soul of the bioeconomy, and that is the biomass, the resource that makes it possible. In the petroleum industry, it's petroleum, right? We know that we get that through certain places in the country where we go underground, we get the petroleum out, and then we transport it wherever it needs to be. And most of this happens in along the shores and also where we can bring it in from other countries. But when we're thinking about the resource for the bioeconomy, it is truly everywhere. So the point I want to make first is the best use of biomass. And I want you to first think about what biomass is. At the Department of Energy, we are feedstock agnostic. We love corn, but we also love the corn cobs. We love municipal solid waste. We love manure. You name it, because all of these make up biomass. And we love what doesn't even exist yet, and that is the energy crop. And that is a new way for farmers to actually increase economics on their farm in very unique ways, and I'll get to that in a minute. But one thing I will tell you about the resource, and it's true of petroleum, but it's also true of biomass. It's not a silver bullet. It can't do all things because it is a limited resource. We don't know when petroleum's gonna run out, but one thing we do know, if we're taking a sustainable approach and want to be very cognizant of our water, our land, and how we utilize it, biomass is a limited resource. And we have a study that the Department of Energy puts out on a every 5-year basis. It's commonly called the Billion Ton Study. And that's because what we're looking at is using very strict sustainability criteria. How can we protect our land and our resource and still produce more that can make up the bioeconomy? And where we come out year after year after year is that the US, once it meets its demand for all other markets that use that biomass, we have over 1 billion tons available for use in an energy market, energy and chemicals market. And so to me, that's the heart and soul of the bioeconomy. Let me throw a few numbers at you so you can understand what that billion tons can do. With the current technologies we have today, We can sequester 32 million tons of CO2 per year with that, rather than petroleum, which is only releasing tons of CO2. We can produce 60 billion gallons of fuel. That's 1/3 of our current use. Like I said, it's not a silver bullet. We still need other technologies to be able to utilize transportation in the way that we've become used to. But it's a big, significant amount, and that's one of the reasons for the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Grand Challenge. They project that the aviation industry will need 35 billion gallons in 2050. Well, we have more than enough biomass to meet that demand. So that is a market that has become incredibly motivated. Delta's here. Their off-take agreements that are necessary for energy companies like DG to get the financing to build those facilities. So we have created an environment where market demand is actually pulling these technologies, and I'll mention one other thing: the aviation industry is investing in the research as well as in the energy companies and the production of that fuel. They're not just buying it. But I have more numbers: 50 billion tons of chemicals, new biochemicals that can replace petroleum-based chemicals, but as my colleague Jay said in the other session, can be performance-enhanced chemicals that can build on the polymers we're used to today that make up our entire society. And then the last number that I think you'll find the most interesting is that through this analysis, we have determined that the farm income will boost by 25 to 30% when we fully meet the demand that biomass can provide. So that's real economic value to the farmer, because he's going to be producing many, many products that are going to be utilized in our economy. So the last thing I'll say about the bioeconomy, and it's something we say often at the National Bioeconomy Board level, it isn't a bioeconomy, it is the economy. And so now I'll shift to your other question, which is about careers. So the bioeconomy is incredibly broad, and most people immediately want to jump on the bandwagon that it's biotechnology, and we need PhDs, and we need innovation, and we've got these enzymes that most people can't even pronounce. Lord knows I can't, and I have a PhD in biochemistry. But it is way more than that. So I want to move beyond these research scientists and the pharmaceutical industry, and I want to talk about careers that combat climate change, energy production careers. We need to know how to utilize that energy. We need to know how to store it. Food security, supply chain resilience, public health, rural economic development, and national economic security are all areas that are going to fuel the creation of the bioeconomy and need to have a trained and skilled workforce. We heard a lot about this earlier. Community colleges are where the bulk of that real workforce is going to come from. But I'm going to tell you that we need to start at the K through 12 level. One, because we need people to understand what a bioeconomy is from the very beginning. So it is an everyday conversation and not one that we're trying to sell on you from a podium. But also because those are the future voters of America. And whether they take a career in the bioeconomy or not, they're going to pick up the newspaper every day. They're going to listen to politicians, and they're going to want to understand what it is that is going on in the world, and this is what's going on. So we really need to start at that level. But then, of course, we also need to build up that career path. The Department of Energy has created a bioenergy career map, and it takes all those sectors of the economy I talked about, and it lets you pick either an interest area or the career, and it will map you all the way back to day one in your search for how can I be part of that career. And it'll also give you knowledge about where you can get that education, what universities, what community colleges. We're developing curriculum that we're taking, it's our Bridges program, and it's based on case studies of actual careers. And we're taking that and we're implementing it across the country at all types of educational levels to ensure that teachers understand what they could be bringing to their students, and that they have those resources immediately available to them. So this is going to help us build on those careers, make them commonplace. I remember when I started school, and I am a Big Ten graduate. Unfortunately, it was Penn State. Take that for what you will. But that said, when I got to that campus, their engineering was considered the kind of the most employable career. Everybody was going into engineering, but at that time, computer science, and I'm not gonna tell you when I was, because I'll age myself, but computer science was really just getting started, and it was considered on that campus the new, most important thing you could take as a major, because you would be employable. And look where we are today. By the way, we didn't have cell phones back then, so I'm aging myself even more. The bioeconomy doesn't have to be that hard to reach type of career activity that students are looking at. Every single major has a role to play when you get to the bioeconomy. And so what we need to do is integrate them together so that people can understand how they work together and how they bring us to a point where we are successful in this country. I think I'm going to end there.
Great, thank you. You know, this is the age of biology. I remember at one point in time in my career, for 3 years, I was the chief scientist for Dow Chemical's Global Biotechnology Platform, and we talked about things like this all the time. But my chemistry friends, they always say, oh, Zorner. I always know when they call us the Dow Biological Company. Well, I've been tempted over the last couple of years to call up to some of those friends and say, hey, why are you changing your name? Because literally, you can make anything out of biomass. It's an absolutely remarkable change in technology that will feed the global economy, the rural economy. It's so important. So Gavin, one thing I did want to mention, by the way, I wanted to thank you not only for your fuels and your beef jerky, but also for your strategically placed bathrooms across the I have 4 kids. And I tell you that you love travel stops were absolutely the favorite thing of my 4 kids. So thank you very much. But anyway, yeah, aside from that, what can you tell us about your partnership with Cargill and how that will benefit lots of your customers?
The partnership with Cargill has been really a fantastic synergy for us and for the project. Love's has an expertise in clean places and friendly faces, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
The bathroom thing is actually really strategically important for our company. I won't go too into detail for this crowd, but just so you know.
The weirdest compliment.
You'd be shocked how often I get it.
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
And that's why we're every 50 miles.
Yeah.
Because we know that sometimes you stop because you want to, and sometimes you stop because you have to. But we're flattered to be a part of the JV with Cargill, because it really marries. We know how to get the fuel from a facility to our stops and provide it to our customers in the most economic way possible and the most efficient way possible. Cargill really brings in an expertise in sourcing the feedstock as well as producing the actual fuel. So we're tremendously excited that we were able to work together with Cargill. We get, I don't know about my Cargill colleagues, but I get more excited than I should about the drone footage as more and more things go into the ground in Hastings. I could geek out for even longer than the bathrooms for this crowd if you'd like, but we're tremendously excited about that. And I just have to say that the state has been critically important in all of this. Between NEFA programs, the Tier 6 of the Advantage Act, they have been critical partners in all of this for both us and Cargill. To say nothing of our colleagues at the DOE, they've been hugely helpful as we've tried to bring this project to fruition.
That's great, thank you. So John, I think you talked about this next question a little bit, but next question was tell us a bit about your technology and why you're interested in Nebraska. But given the conversations everybody else has had up here, is there anything you want to add to what you've already said?
Yeah, well, one thing I'd like to add is the Department of Energy support that we've gotten over the years. I think Department of Energy is there to really promote financially some technologies that they see hope. And back in 2014, when we started licensing this technology, we had no money, and we saw the vision, being able to make sustainable aviation fuel, like renewable gasoline, but we had no way to get there. Department of Energy offered these solicitations, funding opportunity announcements they're called, and they evaluate hundreds of different technologies, and they make their bets. They choose 7 or 8 of them. So the hit rates are really small, and we were fortunate enough to get funding to make renewable gasoline initially. That was very nice for our technology and really kind of validated it. And then another follow-on award for sustainable aviation fuel. So that one thing I want to add is just, you know, the fantastic programs that they offer and bringing new technologies to commercialization.
All right, great, thank you. So Sarah, you know, I do a lot of work on LCAs and carbon intensity of all kinds of biomass. And I always like to talk to my neighbors about the fact that you can grow not only low carbon corn, you can grow carbon negative corn. And so just imagine, sustainable aviation fuel, for every mile you fly, you're taking carbon out of the atmosphere. It blows their minds. And so I want to restructure my question that I wrote you before a little bit is, okay, what technologies are you excited about? But how important are low carbon fuels to Delta and your brand promise and what you're trying to accomplish globally?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I mean, I think that this group has already answered the what are we excited about, right? And innovation, it's what's happening here, right? I think the fact that it's, you know, a brand new market, I think for states, you know, like Nebraska that get it and what it means for their future is really exciting for us. But when it comes to the carbon intensity, you know, at Delta, our staff, we try to meet a minimum life cycle, we are required to meet a minimum life cycle GHG reduction of 50% relative to conventional jet fuel. But more importantly, you know, we're working with our suppliers to leverage appropriate life cycle carbon accounting tools such as DOE's GREET model, really to ensure that we are accounting right and appropriately valuing sustainable aviation or agricultural practices, as well as other complementary efforts like carbon capture, renewable energy, and to reduce the carbon intensity of SAF. From a policy perspective, incentives like the Nebraska law really provide that increasingly higher value for lower carbon intensity fuel. So it rightly encourages and rewards stakeholders for doing everything within their control to reduce their carbon footprint while ensuring we are appropriately valuing all those emission cycles across the life cycle. These are really the essential elements to help drive the industry's decarbonization goals and really drive over the long-term innovation piece of it. And I will note that we also have another one of our partners in the crowd. So we have Gevo, we have Kent Harwick here from Gevo, who I know that in the business that he's doing, is really looking at this very carefully and making sure that's also, again, by a partnership discussion, perspective in some of the legislation we're working, across the country, that the specific language like that's involved in the Nebraska SAF credit is included in other legislative initiatives.
Great, no, thank you, Sarah, it's exciting. And we heard earlier today in one of the sessions that Nebraska has some of the lowest carbon intensity feedstocks in the world, if not the lowest. It's really important. And so, Michael, I'd like you to lead into that question as well, but also address what feeding your facility will do to the Nebraska communities in which you operate. What does that mean to them economically? I know you addressed it a little bit, but maybe you could build on that some more.
Well, let me sort of look at that a little more broadly, all right? First of all, we like to say we're both green, but we're also clean. Remember, when we put in a facility, and we have some hard facts. For instance, we're looking at a facility in Louisiana, and it turns out that our atmospheric emissions are less than the local hospital, okay? So we like to think of ourselves as being a good neighbor when we acquire property in one way or another, look to build this big $5 billion thing out there. We like to say we look like a refinery, we don't smell like a refinery, okay? And it's the nature of our technology. It's not me trying to put language on a press release or on a website, right? It's the nature of the technology we use. The next issue is in terms of, well, how does it benefit, right? Well, it was discussed that, wow, this is a lot of jobs for folks with PhDs. Well, okay, that's true, but about half of the people we employ at a facility are basically running front-end loaders, okay? That means that I'm basically paying around $60,000 to $70,000 a year plus benefits for about 300 people who do not need a 4-year degree. It's really that simple, okay? So, one of the principal things we do when we will come into a community is that DOE's LPO, that's not Valerie's area, but there's other parts of DOE, we need to have a community benefits agreement in place. And every community is different, except for one thing. It turns out that young people can get the tuition but they can't afford to go to school. They've got to take a job flipping burgers someplace because they have families to support. They come out of high school and they've got to go earn a living. What we do is we provide what we call paid internships that allows these kids to go to school, get either 4-year degrees or 2-year community college degrees, or we work with high school to make sure they reinstitute shop, okay? So that they can do the kind of jobs that we can give them, okay? And we work with the local areas. In Louisiana, it's about healthcare. Up here, I think it's about housing and education. I don't think there's anything else here. Now, it was mentioned that we're doing something with water, all right? In Texas, if you take oil out of the ground, somebody writes you a dirty letter. If you take water out of the ground, they run for their rifle. Okay? I have a strong feeling Nebraska is sort of like that. Okay? So, working with the governor, I said, you know what? Right now, today, the market for Nebraska jet fuel is Chicago. Chicago is on the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are fresh water. I have to bring my rail cars back deadhead because of the technology issues of SAF. I can't just load these into any old rail car that's full of petroleum or some other tankage. I gotta make sure they're clean tanks. So Trinity has what they call a bladder, okay? It's basically got a big rubber balloon in it. It's not rubber, but it's a big balloon in the car. If I fill on one side, I put in SAF. I put on the other side, I put in water. If I'm gonna bring those rail cars back deadhead, I might as well fill them full of water. Now, in a green electrolysis process that we use, you electrolyze water, you get hydrogen and oxygen. We use the hydrogen and match it up with carbon monoxide to make fuel. But guess what? I go electrolyze the water. Where's the water coming from? It's either going to come from you guys, or it can come from those rail cars. Okay? That then opens up the water that's in the ground for me to allow other folks in the state to use, because you're doing the right thing. You're protecting your aquifer. And that's the other issue here. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter really whether you truly believe climate change is the thing or not. Every day in this country for the last 100 years, we have spent huge amounts of money to manage the wrath of Mother Nature. We build dams, we build levees, we do all sorts of things to manage events. And we have historically done it in such a way that they pay for themselves. The entire Tennessee River Valley, those dams were built for flood control, but they generated the power to electrolyze that entire part of the country. Okay? We have the opportunity to do the same thing here. When you do these things, you manage the situation. You make the resources and the labor and the economics of agriculture better. What happens when something is more profitable? More people want to do it. You give kids the reason to stay here rather than going to Austin or Los Angeles or elsewhere. I have a brother-in-law. He's a brilliant kid, went to UVA, got his electrical degree. He flogs software for Microsoft. That's what he does. He went to New York because that's where the action is. Okay? I want to give Nebraskans a reason to be able to keep their kids here doing technology, but also remember that not every kid is cut out for a 4-year degree.
Thank you, Michael. Nice point. And I think one of the earlier sessions today, we talked about outreach in middle schools and high schools to make these kids aware of these opportunities. And you don't need a PhD. Let's face it, I have one. And the old adage is a PhD is you know more and more about less and less until everything about nothing. At some point in time, I'm with you. I almost can't spell PhD because somebody spots me the P and the H. So, they also have a saying in the West that whiskey's for drinking, water's for finding. Anyway, I had a few more questions for you, but we're close to the end here, and I want to make sure the audience has a chance to at least ask a couple of questions. So let's take a couple of questions from the audience. If you just raise your hand right over there, sir. Tell us who you are.
Question for Michael at DG. How many tons of stover do you need to make 193 million gallons of SAF?
860,000 dry tons.
Yeah, I was loading my calculator. We have another question? Yes, over here. And tell us your name, if you who you're with.
All right, my name's Heather. I just have a quick question. So, most of the time after they harvest the corn, usually then the ranchers put their cows out there to eat the stalks, the corn cobs, the corn. Are you planning on doing contracts with farmers through the state or through you?
I'm ambivalent. Some people call me megalomaniac. I want to do everything. I don't really want to be that guy. So whether I work with the county, the state, or directly with farmers, we want to do long-term offtake agreements with farmers for the supply, because that really is, what we're finding is that's the key to getting farmers on board. They never, in the silage business, you never know from year to year whether there's any value in the silage contract, okay? And if so, lots of the time it's very low, you know, it doesn't really do any money, you're sort of doing it. Maybe in 1983, you remember you made a lot of money, but that was 1 year, all right? We want to give farmers a solid, predictable, profitable income long-term, so they can efficiently put in the equipment to do the harvesting effectively. You can only do that when you know you have a long-term uptake. Now, whether we do it through the state or directly, you know, I'm in good.
My name is Debbie, and a continued question off of that. You had mentioned the use of the cob.
Mm-hmm.
Are you using the cob and the the leaves and the stalk, or just the cob?
I can use it all.
Okay.
But this gets real complex now. Look, I'm like Wellington. I know nothing of agriculture. Okay. It's probably more cost effective and efficient to simply put existing technology on the back of a combine and collect the corn cob and leave the rest on the ground. Because there's kind of a value issue there. It's not high, but if you take it all away, now I've got to add more fertilizers. And just go ask folks what it's like to be in the fertilizer business right now, given that Russia and Ukraine stuff is suddenly unavailable. Okay? So it's probably more efficient for us to take the corn cob, because that can be a trailer. It's a second trailer. It's still the same pass over the field. I can collect it at one time, and then it can be brought to me as a feedstock. It kind of simplifies this process, and the rest of it goes back on the road. Okay? But I can technically use it all. So in a lot of ways, it's really up to the farmer. What does the farmer want to do? Okay? I'll work with you guys. You understand this infinitely better than I do. Maybe you know better than me. But we'll do whatever's best.
I think it's important to remember that a certain amount of biomass needs to go back into the soil for the microbes to chew on and then turn that into soil again better. So it really is a decision.
Just to kind of give you an idea, over like about 20 years ago, we really began studying the concept of bringing the stover off the field, and Idaho National Lab has become the expert laboratory here, along with Oak Ridge, about how much really should be left on the field. We work closely with USDA, who puts out these numbers to kind of encourage farmers to understand that sometimes it's too much, it's about making your soil the best it can possibly be. But we also developed one-pass harvesters who could bring both off the field at the same time. But there's no reason to invest in such a thing until the market is established, and that's where we are, right at that transition point. So the technology's there and available, but first we need projects like this to kind of encourage it along, so that in your next generation, when you buy your next combines and everything, you can look to these advanced technologies because it'll make sense.
Another question right here.
So you were talking about, my name is David Branch, I'm from Epigenetics. You were talking about possibly the state or you going to the farmers and doing it direct. So what I hear actually is, I don't think the state wants to be that person. I don't think the county wants to be that person because I deal with the county all day long. But isn't that a perfect space for a new startup, an entrepreneur start looking at now? Would you be willing to talk to somebody about that?
I absolutely would, however, I want, and I think it's a good idea, okay? However, I do want to teach you one thing. Regretfully, I've lived in the DC area most of my adult life. And when it comes to whether the state or the federal government wants to do this, the only true rule in DC, for instance, is there are really actually no rules. Okay? So if, remember, I'm always challenged, especially when dealing with entities like DOE, in not making sure that I don't have transaction risk on top of transaction risk. Okay? The last thing DOE needs is for me to build a $5 billion thing out in the middle of Nebraska, and then find out what feedstock to feed it, because I'm relying on a startup to get my critical feedstock. Okay? My opinion, everybody has an opinion. My opinion is that a startup working with the county and the state to make sure that that feedstock is available is probably the best way to go. Lots of times, very good companies start off as joint ventures with the county and the state. Happens all the time. And then it gets spun off, and it's now just a commercial entity. Okay? So I think that that's probably a wiser way for me to go. But I also have to have the feedstock, and I gotta do whatever it takes to get it done. Okay? Now, in Louisiana, for instance, I work with the sugarcane mills to get my biomass feedstock. They're up and running entities. I don't really work with the state, but the state is basically hitting them with a carrot and a stick. You're gonna make money, this makes you cleaner, let's go on ahead, change the way you've historically done things. You're gonna make money doing this, but if you don't do it, we're gonna make your life miserable because you're basically putting it to everybody else, okay? So, I don't, I'm in a room here with the governor, and I don't wanna put him in the spot, all right? So, the bottom line here is, I'll do what it takes to get the feedstock. Please, don't make me have to go into a bunch of government bureaucrats who are playing banker, who are not gonna get a bonus if it works, but they will get indicted if it fails. And tell them that my big thing is now reliant on some other startup. Okay? So, look, I'm giving you an honest answer.
I just can't see.
We're past time here. I've got to the high sign, so I just,
Thank you.
if everybody would thank our panelists. Thank you for your attendance and your